You
Right.
know, like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we say we want to do so many movements in three dimensions. So, it really is that basic concept of how are we gonna challenge the sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse plane, so your ability to move, front to back, side to side, and then also, rotationally. All those things have to be trained. And so if we do the old school, squat, deadlift, bench press, that's sagittal plane, sagittal plane, sagittal plane, right? So no wonder your low back blows out when you turn to pick something up. So there's got to be a huge rotational component to exercise. Twisting, bending, rotating. All of that has to be included.
Yeah. You know, what's funny too is you mentioned second in that in the beginning that like explosive stuff seems to be a little overrated. And I couldn't agree more with you on that one because I do enjoy explosive power drills. But like you said, there's a time and a place. Like you're like myself, I'm a young guy, but I've had 4 knee surgeries. So I need to
Right.
start thinking about when I'm going to apply my explosive power to my lower body. And
Right.
as you get older, you're just going to have less cartilage, less surface, and so you also have to think about it as well. And to me, the funniest part about it is somebody will go from like a regular squat to like a jump squat as their progression, not realize, and then they'll want to go to something like weighted jump squat or like something box jumps and stuff like that, not
Right.
realizing that maybe they could have taken a different route and worked up to like a single leg squat, slow under
Right.
control, and built more stability and strength in all of those planes of motion because now they're on one limb. What's your take
Yeah.
on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the power thing, honestly, is really where the research is going, especially in aging, because what we're finding is power is more important than strength. So power is really important, and we train power, but we want to train power in a way that's not high impact. So we've learned ways to train people for power without just killing their knees and their hips. And so even simple things like power stands and power steps you can teach clients without having to beat them up by doing box jumps.
Right.
So there are a lot of ways to train power, and the Kaiser functional trainer and even resistance bands are great for doing power movements because you can move with velocity and speed, but you don't necessarily have to beat yourself up. So I always caution people with the jumping. I mean, when you're doing tons of jumping with older clients, you just have to pay attention to that. Doesn't mean you can't do some. I mean, I've got clients in their 70s that can jump rope, that can hop, that can do squat jumps. We just don't do hundreds of them, because their knees are going to bother them, So, but training for power, kind of explosive movement, is important. The key is to make sure the explosive movement isn't stick and generating, shearing forces on their joints, So lots of box jumps, throwing weights over your head like snatches and things like that are going to create forces that, older clients just don't need at their joints. There are smarter ways to do it. And there's even some equipment out there that can help you. So yeah, is explosive important? Is power important? It's absolutely essential. I mean, if you've ever seen somebody get out of a chair slowly, they're demonstrating to you their lack of power. They're actually not demonstrating lack of strength. They're demonstrating lack of power. So power is really important, and helping clients keep their ability to move with some speed, move with some velocity is really important. We can't really train people over 50 like we want to train high school athletes. It's just not a smart thing to do. Their bodies aren't going to take it, and it really doesn't lead to the results you want anyway.
Yeah, that brings us back to the point we were just making before, which is like, even if somebody can jump, when's the last time somebody taught them how to jump and land perfectly? Because to
Right.
me, if you had a perfect jump and landing and no joint damage, you could probably get away with that for a pretty long period of time. But even if there's that minor, valgus collapse or medial rotation or something slightly off, it's just like, on jump number 1001 is when it's going to hit the fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, and for a lot of our clients that are in great shape and can jump, it's just a let's keep it to moderation, because overtraining, at the age of 65 is pretty easy to do, So yeah, a 30-year-old can probably handle 50 squat jumps. But do we really need to do that with a 60-year-old? We probably can get what we want out of 20 of the same thing, and then move on to something different, So you're not just pounding the knees, because we only have so much articular cartilage in the knees, so the last thing we want to do is be abusing it with our exercise program.
Right, right. So I'm interested. You mentioned you guys do lots of stuff. You're focused on balance and complexity and everything like that. So what happens when somebody new comes in? Do you start them with real basic exercises, and then is the focus complexity of movement as a progression, or is the focus increase of like in resistance and intensity?
It's really both. So
Okay.
we really look at exercises and say, okay, we're going to start, for a lunge, for example, we're going to see, can you lunge just simple straight ahead to start out with? And if you can handle that, then we're going to add maybe some resistance to it. And then we may add some complexity to it. So we're really going to do both.
Okay.
We definitely want to increase load. People need to be stronger. There's no doubt. We're going to add some weight. Then we also want to add some complexity to the movement. So we're going to add, another dimension where maybe they have to rotate or shift their weight, or even do some sort of type of movement, something where it's going to throw them off balance, because we want the balance, we want the coordination, we want all of those things. We always tell people we're not just training for strength. That's a huge, huge mistake.
Yeah, that's interesting. So where do you start people out with? Like, give me like just a handful of your most basic exercises that you guys do.
Okay. An average new client that starts out, we're going to start out with some simple squats, some simple step ups. The steps probably going to be 4 to 6 inches, and then we're going to progress towards an 8 to a 12. But they'll start out with a 4 to 6 inch step, probably no weight whatsoever. We'll do some lunges. We like to do a lot of different dumbbell things where we're incorporating squats and lunges. So they might be squatting and learning an arm curl. So they might be squatting and learning a overhead press.
Sure.
They might be lunging and learning both of those. And then we might even do some lunges in a bent over row position, and then they're going to do some rows. And so we try to teach numerous different things at the same time. Well, we're also going to teach just basic movements, like sort of the foundation of a squat jump. So we're going to teach, squatting down, reaching down, getting down to the floor, reaching all the way up overhead, extending up on your toes. So essentially like a total body extension. So we're really just laying the foundation. We always try to get people on some sort of cable or resistance band in the first couple of sessions, just so we see how they do with pushing and pulling. A lot of people have trouble with that the first session or two. You introduce an external resistance, they have to pull or push, and they immediately show they're unstable. So
I can imagine that's really big when it comes to a standing position, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So ideally, I want to get people eventually where they can do, a squat or a lunge and do a cable press or a cable row or even a cable pull down in a squat or a lunge. Well, we don't introduce that the first session.
Sure.
First session, we might just introduce the cable movement, separately introduce the squat or the lunge, and eventually we try to put those together because we want people to do more complex movements at the same time. Ideally, just like any client, we want to try to be training as many muscle groups at the same time. So if we can do a lower body and an upper body exercise at the same time, a squat with a chest press, a lunge with a chest press, we're going to get more bang for our buck.
Yeah, very cool. And then just like what kind of general rep ranges or intervals do you guys use with your own training clients?
Yeah, for the most part, we would say a rep range of 10 to 15. However, with some of our older clients, I will always say if form fatigue is setting in, if somebody they can't maintain the form after 8 reps, we're going to stop, and so ideally you want to do something 10 to 15 times. So a little bit higher rep range than maybe a younger population, because we want to have a little bit less load. We don't want to be over stressing the joints. But I mean, at 10 reps, you can be doing some pretty heavy weights, and I've got clients in their 60s and 70s that are really strong, so and that's just fine. We work them really hard. So if we're doing something for time, pretty much the same rules that would apply for me or you. I mean, we might do 30-second intervals, 15-second rests. We might do 45-second intervals, 15-second rests. We might do something for a minute. We do planks for up to a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes with clients. I've got clients longer than I can. So time intervals, very similar to a lot of things that we would do with clients of any age. You just kind of use an appropriate interval depending on how intense the activity is.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you guys just keep it really simple and you're just focused on getting people to move better and just adding complexity as they keep coming back. Do you guys keep track of it for all of your clients, and then every time they come in, we were doing a lunge with a curl, now let's do a lunge with a curl with a press kind of thing?